Hey there YouTube, Bearman here with another video. Today what I wanted to do was go over the different various gear sets that I use for tanking, as well as DPS and raid, and then we can also go over my talents. I haven't really had to change my spec very much. The build that I'm using is a tank and DPS dual build. You sacrifice a little bit from the DPS side, but I feel like it does a pretty good job of compromising, allowing you to do both freely. So you can see here I picked up Nature's Grasp. This is just a great talent to have for PvP as well, but the main reason we're grabbing that from a PvE standpoint, natural weapons, 10% extra weapon damage is great to have, and then also Omen of Clarity is huge. Something you definitely want to get your hands on, bear or cat. Over here, ferocity, the reduced rage or energy cost, very important. Feral instinct, if you were a full feral tank build, you probably would want 5 out of 5 in this, but I've noticed that the 3 out of 5 is enough. I definitely would benefit from that extra percent threat, but I think that I can manage in the situation that I'm in without it. Kind of using more threat pieces in my gear sets to kind of compensate for that. Thick hide I think is really important to have. I know that in later phases of the game, thick hide may not be quite as necessary as it is now. There is an armor cap in the game. At a certain point, increasing your armor, the benefit that you get from that starts to decrease the higher armor you get. I don't know what the value is around, but I know that once you start getting some AQ Nax gear, you can kind of start to think about taking points out of thick hide and moving them around. So maybe I take 2 out of here and I put them into feral instinct or something like that. Feral charge, lovely ability to have, gotta have it. Sharpened claws, and then if you were in just a tank build, you would just take this Primal Fury and ignore Blood Frenzy, but because I'm doing DPS and tanking, I want to have both of them. Then Improved Shred is very nice to have for the DPS, pretty much essential, as well as having Savage Fury, increased 20% damage. Then of course we have to go into Predatory Strikes in order to get down to Heart of the Wild, and then eventually Leader of the Pack. Obviously you're picking up Fairy Fire, and then this is one thing that kind of had to change my style of play a little bit. My enrage no longer generates that 10 points of rage instantly, so it can be kind of a pain. Usually the way I used enrage was mostly in Molten Core, because I've had this spec changed since before BWL came out, but pretty much if I was rage starved, it was really nice to be able to pop in rage and immediately have a maul that I could use just in case. But if you focus on saving up rage before pulls, or just use your enrage properly, it shouldn't really be a problem. But that is pretty much the spec. When it comes to the gear, I would say that this is my default DPS, or not default DPS, default threat tank set. There are a few pieces in here that I possibly switch out. I'm also testing out some new enchants on the gear, but this is the general gist. Mask of the Unforgiven, and there is a really nice upgrade for this actually in Zul'Gurub that you will want to get your hands on. That is going to be Blood-Drenched Mask. It's pretty much a straight upgrade from this one. You can see it as 22 agility, 17 stamp, 2 hit, so you're losing 1% crit, but I'm pretty sure 22 agility. I know agility gives you critical strike chance. I don't know exactly how much 22 gives you, but there's that trade-off there. But agility also gives you armor, so that's always good to have. And dodge. And this also has more armor on it. So that's a really good upgrade. You want to look at it in CG. And then obviously an exceeded tooth pendant. I've been using this necklace since I got it. Honestly, I haven't really taken it off. I do have them down in steadfast might, but honestly, I've been preferring having the tooth pendant on just for that extra threat. Holders. Typically, I'll be using either the worm tongue or my PvP shoulders. Fire resist fights, obviously I'll be using the fire guard shoulders. These ones, the worm tongue, just I feel like the agility just gives me that extra crit that I'm looking for. I feel like I hit harder when I'm wearing these shoulders, but the PvP shoulders provide a good amount of mitigation and threat. Cloak. Right now I'm using the Elementium threaded cloak. If you don't have that, Dragon's Blood Cape is a really good option. I mean, look at that, 116 armor, 22 stam, 9 strength. Then you get that resistance with it as well. It's a great cape. The cape, if you don't have these, you could use the Cloak of Warding is a really good one for just straight up mitigation. It's a ton of armor, so if you find yourself lacking in armor, which typically isn't the issue with Feral Druids, but if that is where you find yourself, that's a great option. The PvP cloaks, good options. Sergeant Cloak, I think it is. Then there's the Stone Skin Cargo Cape Cloak, also very good. Chest, I'm using Murferion's Blessed Bulwark. Before that, I was using the. Find it for you. Breastplate of Bloodthirst, also a pretty good one. If you don't have either of those, if you're looking for a more threat-based piece, you could go for Cadaverous Armor. For a tanking piece, there is the Warbear's Harness, Priebus piece. There's not a ton of chest pieces out there for Druids, so, you know, especially even something like the rank 10 PvP gear can be really useful in that situation. Or, wait, this is rank 8, I believe. I use the Risk Guard Stability, and I interject or switch that between Black Mist, depending on if I need that 1% hit. Certain fire resist fights, I also will use these here. So, for weapons, I'm always switching between Unyielding Maul, Warden Staff, and then obviously Crowd Pummelers for boss fights. Not too much of a difference between Unyielding Maul and Warden Staff. Warden Staff is going to be a better overall item in my opinion. You can put a counterweight on the Unyielding Maul, and then having the attack speed and chance to the gear, I am getting 6% increased attack speed. I just wanted to throw this on here and test it out. I don't believe it actually provides higher DPS over agility on these pieces, but I thought I would give it a try. But usually I've been wearing Warden Staff, but for now, going to the Unyielding Maul. These gloves are something I got pretty recently here. Definitely really useful to have. 2% hit, some agi and stam, crit, or not crit, some agi and stam. Great to have. If you don't have those, I'd probably suggest Devil's Horse set, gloves and legs, great pieces of gear. Belt, I'm using the Belt of Preserves Heads, which you get from finishing the initial quest in ZG, getting the heads from the first few priest bosses. You need 5 of them. Mitigation piece / fire resist. They will have a belt, great to have on things like Firebar or Ragnaros. Taut Dragonite belt is also another really great mitigation piece. I feel that I mostly swap between Belt of Preserved Heads and Taut Dragonite belt, but like I said, 26 fire resistance is pretty hard to give up, as well as having much more armor than either of these two other belts. 223 armor is a lot of armor. the abyssal leggings of striking, something that just came out recently with the release of the quests in Silithus. Really good stats on these. 152 armor, which I think was more than the double sword set by a little bit. 15 agi strength and stamina, and a crit. Great pants. Like I said, if you can't get your hands on these, just go ahead and go with the double sword set because you'll get the same amount of hit. Boots is Shadow Flame. Obviously, these are some amazing boots for Feral Druids. 286 armor, 22 stam, 44 AP, 2% hit. Love it. 286 armor, some of the highest armor in the boots in the game for leather. So I'm gonna be wearing these for a long time. If you don't have these, there are a few different options. The core round boots are actually a pretty good alternative. Also give some fire resist, so that's great. My ranking boots offered a fair good alternative. Shadow Fiend boots, and then yeah. I like to use one hit ring, at least I have been recently. Switching between the Master Dragon Slayer's ring and Don Julio's band. Just because Don Julio's will give me an extra % crit over the Dragon Slayers, but I've been stacking a little more crit chance, so I haven't been too in need of that. Heavy Dark Iron ring. This is an amazing ring. Get out of Molten Core. You should definitely have your hands on this if you want to be doing any tanking as a Feral Druid. 110 armor, 20 stamp, 5 defense. Don't really care about the defense, but it is nice to have. And 20 stamp, 110 armor from a ring slot is huge. And that's where the Market Tyranny comes in. You get this from the Nixie Attunement questline. If you're going to be doing tanking, I would choose this over Black Hand's Breath. That's the trinket that gives you 2% crit chance. This Mark of Tyranny is best in slot for mitigation in terms of the trinket slot. For the entire game, you're not going to get one that gives you more mitigation than this, so I think it's worth taking it. Even though Black Hand's Breath is a good trinket, you will replace it eventually, unlike this Mark of Tyranny, which for its class is going to be best in slot forever. And then I have recently been using Hand of Justice. If it procs on a maul attack, you'll get a subsequent maul attack, and honestly, the amount of threat that generates is too good to pass up. So I've been using that recently, but in a more mitigation every fight, maybe you use Smoking Heart of the Mountain or something like that. And then go ahead and I'll switch sets here. DPS set, obviously, using the Wolf Head Helm, Onyxia Tooth Pendant, True Strike for that 2% hit, Cape of the Black Baron, out of Strat Udi, Great Cape, really hard to replace. Balfieren's Best Bulwark again. Like I said, Cadaverous is, I believe, an equal match to Malfurions based on DPS alone. So, if you can't get your hands on this, that is a good option. Risk Assisted Ability. You can notice that there's a similarity between these two sets. Obviously, a few key differences being no mitigation ring, no mitigation the helmet and the shoulders cape, but half these pieces are the same. The reason that is when I'm in that tanking set, as our healers are getting more and more geared, the fights become easier and easier for them to heal through. And so really what the challenge becomes is, can you as a tank generate enough DPS to generate that threat that you need for the DPS in your raid to go all in? Because really at this point you're just trying to either clear the content as quickly as you can or try and be as efficient as you can, but your guild's gonna have certain goals, and a lot of the time the way for you to help that as a tank in a raid is basically push the ceiling of your threat generation, because that's going to allow all of your DPS to push the ceiling of their DPS. And everyone's looking to parse, everyone's looking to have a good raid, so I think that sacrificing that little bit of mitigation, because here are the pieces that I probably would have swapped out if I was looking for mitigation. I would swap out the belt, and I may swap out Hand of Justice. I think that's about all I would do. But at the same time, I would be losing 1% hit. Not great, but I could always get it back with my Black Mist arm cards. And then obviously I've been messing around with Hand of Justice. I think it's a really good threat piece, but I haven't used it for too long, so I can't say too much. But switching it to Smoking Out of the Martin definitely would reduce the amount of threat generated. But anyway, that's about it for today. I thought I would just make a video kind of showing off what I've been using, just in case anyone was wondering. Anyways, you guys have a good rest of your day. Talk to you later. Peace.